Welcome to the Momentum webinar series, where we ask expert facilitators to weigh in on topics that help advance women in leadership.
We do want to thank you all for being here on our virtual training today with Csilla Muscan. Today, we're going to be learning about how to use your most powerful voice. And I cannot wait to get started with Csilla. She's a dear friend of mine and an amazing professional. I've learned a lot from her, working with her and getting to be around her. Csilla Muscan is an amazing storyteller, speaker, and I wish we had time that she could sing us a song today. She has a phenomenal voice. She's a songwriter, singer. So she's not new to the stage at all. And I have watched her develop her instincts and trust them more and just grow. And I love having her here with us today. She's a dear friend.
Darla, thank you so much for that kind introduction. Hi, everyone. I am so excited to be here with you, especially that we are talking about a topic that is dear and near to my heart, but I also think it is so relevant for every single one of us. And with all of that, I'm going to share my screen and we're going to get going. Can you see my screen? I just want to double check. Okay. Awesome. So today we're talking all about how to discover and use your most powerful voice. And I personally like strategies. I like to get technical. And so while we're going to be touching on some mindset things and hopefully having some mindset shifts, I also am going to get quite granular in giving you some strategies that you're going to find helpful. In the last few months, I've had so many conversations with leaders, a lot of executives, people who own their businesses. And the conversation went something like this. The online world is getting noisier and noisier. I feel like I have to shout louder and louder in order to be heard. It's harder and harder to stand out. How do I get heard? Now, I don't know if this is something that you can relate to. It's definitely something that I have been personally struggling with, because especially the fact that I am an introvert, I don't like to try to shout louder and louder in order to be noticed. But I also know that in order for my message to be heard by the right people, in order for me to be able to help people, I need to show up consistently, right? And so where do we find that balance? And also, how do we lean into our most authentic and most powerful voice? What does that actually look like in practicality? Well, those are all the things that we're going to be talking about today. And my hope is that by the end of our time together, you're going to walk away with knowing why there is so much potency in your voice, why the potency of your impact actually lies in the power of your voice, and how your voice is your greatest asset in order to make a great impact in the lives of those that you are interacting with. In case this is the first time that we're meeting, which is probably for most of you, if this is the first time that you've heard of me, can you put in the chat first time? I would love to see that. But my name is Csilla Muscan, and the reason for the unique name, and I'm pretty sure you probably picked up on my accent also by now, is that I am actually originally from Hungary. I was born in Hungary, raised in Hungary, and lived in the US since 2007. I always tell my audience that I'm an unlikely keynote speaker with 20 years of stage experience. And the reason why I'm an unlikely speaker is because I actually grew up to be a very shy person, very reserved and introverted. And while as in my 20s, I traveled a lot and I sang and toured in a lot of different places, I never really saw myself as someone who would feel not only comfortable on stage, sharing my own ideas and thoughts, but actually have fun while I do it. And here we are 20 years later. I not only have had the opportunity to speak on thousands of stages, but also have the opportunity to work with professionals in a coaching capacity. I'm also an author, a certified speaking coach. I absolutely love, and I always tell people, read Obsession. I love strong coffee. I'm a snob, unapologetically, and also a total book nerd. I usually read books anywhere from 30 to 50 books a year, and that's really just me holding myself back. I'm also the founder of Speak Like It Matters, but most importantly, I am really, really passionate about helping professionals know how to show up confidently with their message, how to be articulate in when they talk about their companies, what they're passionate about, and presenting their message in a way that's not only effective but also strategic. So if you like my style of teaching today, I will have a special offer for you at the end. I'm going to give you some details at the end, and I believe you're also going to love that offer. But for now, our key objective for the next 35-40 minutes is we're going to look at what it means to discover your voice. What does it sound like in its most authentic and confident form? What are some of the mistakes that many of us make and we can avoid? What are the pitfalls that we can avoid in order to be taken seriously anytime we show up with our message? We sound articulate and clear. And then also how we can enhance our voice and presence. And what are some really practical strategies that you can use to sound more confident and more competent? Does that sound good to everybody? If you're ready, I want you to put a ready in the chat box. I really, really do not like talking at people. So this is a two-way conversation. I would love to hear back from you. We're going to have some time at the end for Q&A, but let's just have a conversation going on in the chat as well while we're doing this. Also, I'm going to put you to work a little bit, not too much, but just a little bit, because I do believe that you already carved out the time. You're here. Might as well, let's get it rolling. Let's get the creative juices rolling, and then you can take it further on your own. The first concept I want us to look at is what does it mean to discover your one-of-a-kind voice? What does it sound like in its most authentic and confident form? So when I say voice, I am referring to two things, right? I'm referring to your inner voice and I'm referring to your outer voice. And the reason why I want to address both is because they're very much interconnected. Not only that, but your inner voice is going to greatly impact your outer voice. Your inner voice is going to affect very much how you show up in the world, how you speak, the kind of boundaries you set up, and how you basically train people how they can speak to you and interact with you, right? And our inner voice is basically our self-image. It's our thoughts, what we think of ourselves, right? So if we look at it, I put it up here on the slides. The inner voice is often referring to our thoughts, to our feelings or emotions, and the inner dialogue that we have constantly going on in our heads. And our outer voice is the actual spoken communication we use to express our inner thoughts. And as I said before, our inner voice is always going to influence our outer voice. Now, if our inner dialogue, our self-talk is positive and is empowering, that is wonderful, right? Because it's going to help you show up more powerfully in front of others. Unfortunately, most of us have, how shall I say it so that I don't use a really strong word? We have a very negative self-talk many times. And we have these negative self-talk that's going on 24/7 in our heads, in the background, and it's really influencing how we show up in the world, right? And so we want to make sure that we develop an inner voice, which is something we have control over, that's going to empower us to show up more powerfully with our outer voice. So I don't know about you, but I like examples. I think in terms of pictures and using examples and stories in order to actually really cement some of the ideas that I learned. So that's why I brought along Nicole with me. And I want to demonstrate a little bit how our inner voice impacts our outer voice, and how we can utilize it in order to really show up in a more articulate and confident way with our message. So obviously Nicole is a fictitious person, but she really is the representation of pretty much all of my clients and myself included as well. So let's say Nicole is an executive at a company, and she just got an opportunity to present in front of a group. She got the opportunity to talk about her company, what her company does, products and services that they offer, and how they impact people, how they serve their clients, right? Well, right before Nicole gets on stage, she has an inner dialogue that is going on. Now, raise your hands. How many of you have that inner chatter going on in your minds right before you step on stage, or before you're supposed to have a really powerful conversation, or you are going for a job interview, right? And again, if our inner dialogue is empowering, that's wonderful. But if it's not, it's really going to impact how we show up. So let's say that Nicole doesn't have the best self-talk right before she gets on stage. So what is she going to tell herself? She might say, well, what if I'm not really cut out for this? Maybe they overestimated my abilities. I'm not really able to actually deliver, right? She's struggling with self-doubt. What if she has a fear of failure? What if I mess up and everyone will see and my career could take a hit, right? I'm going to look like a fool in front of people. Maybe she's overthinking it, right? Maybe she says, I bet they'll ask all these different questions that I haven't anticipated, and I'll just stand there looking absolutely clueless. What if she has imposter syndrome, which according to statistics, 75% of people struggle with imposter syndrome. And she keeps telling herself, they're going to find out I'm not as smart or as talented as they thought, right? How many of us think that, even though we've been in our niche or expertise for many, many years, we still struggle with that? Now, let me ask you this. When you see this list, when you think of these inner dialogues, do you feel empowered right before you step on stage? Is this making you go, yes, I've got this, right? No, it tears us down, and it's actually making us less and less confident the more we dwell on these negative inner voices. And so when we continually think negatively like this, it's really going to impact how we show up. And so when we have these kinds of thoughts going on in our heads, how does this show up in our outer voice? It's going to show up in an anxious way, and I'll show you that on the next slide. But how about if we flip the script? What if Nicole said, you know what? I'm not going to think like this. I'm going to choose empowering inner thoughts, and I'm going to choose an optimistic outlook. This presentation is going to help someone today. I am here to serve. This is not about me. This is about me showing up and helping someone that needs help in this area, right? Or maybe thinking in constructive criticism. Every time you practice, you get better. All the preparation is going to pay off today. Reassuring ourselves. Mistakes happen. You know how to handle them and keep moving forward. In fact, mistakes are part of the process. That's how we become better, because when we make mistakes, we learn lessons and we know how to not do it next time. And what if we gave ourselves a little bit of self-compassion? Be kind to yourself. You've worked hard, and it's okay to be nervous. It shows you care. Even the most seasoned presenters are nervous. I'm still nervous. In the first 5 minutes of my presentation, I'm still anxious and jittery. In fact, if I wasn't, I told my husband, that's the day I'm going to quit, because it means that my heart is not fully in it. When we care, we're going to feel a little bit nervous. And that's actually good, because it brings energy to our message. we can actually flip that and say, actually, that's not anxiousness, it's not nervousness, it's adrenaline. It gives me excitement. It gives energy to what I'm about to share. How much more empowering that is. Even the energy you feel around it is different, right? You can see the difference. So when we, again, have empowering inner voice going on, it's going to help us to show up in a more powerful way with our outer voice. So now let's look at when we have an anxious inner world, an anxious self-talk going on, how is that going to show up in our words? Well, we might be hesitant. We might start out a presentation going, so I guess we should get started. I hope you find this interesting. Does that sound reassuring to you? I know if I was sitting in the audience, I'd be like, I'm not sure. Then we may be overly apologizing, which being a woman, and I've seen this in women that I have worked with, we over apologize so much. And we apologize unnecessarily, even for things that we didn't do. I was at a conference a couple of weeks ago, and the hallway was really like busy. There were a lot of people, and there was a gentleman that bumped into me, and I apologized for him bumping into me. And I was like, I caught myself. I was like, why am I apologizing? I didn't even do anything wrong. But we over apologize, right? Sorry if this is confusing. I tried to make it clear, but it's complicated stuff, right? So it comes out in our words. Then we're overly modest. I'm not the expert here, but I'll do my best to explain this part. And then we have a hard time having a strong finish, a strong close. And so we might say something like, so yeah, that's pretty much it. Sorry if I took up too much of your time, right? So you look at that and it doesn't feel very confident. It doesn't look like you are feeling very comfortable in your skin, or it doesn't send the message of like you actually know what you're talking about, right? Now, what about if, again, we flip that script, we worked on our inner dialogue, and used it to help us show up more powerfully in our words. So we show up enthusiastically. I am thrilled to share with you the innovative approaches we've been working on. What a different tone to start on, right? We're open and inviting. I encourage you to ask questions as we go along. Dialogue is absolutely invaluable. Then having gracious responses when somebody brings questions. That's an excellent question. I'm glad you brought that up. Let's talk about it. Let's chat about it. It shows that you are confident in where you stand and you're okay with being questioned, right? And then finally, having a warm gratitude. I appreciate your time and attention today. I'm available for any further discussion that might spark out of this conversation that we had today. What a different tone, right? You show up in a completely different way, saying things in a more empowered and powerful way. So here's what I know to be true. This is something that I have been working on for the last 15 years. I used to have a really, really negative self-talk, and it held me back for many, many years. Our external voice is merely an echo of our internal beliefs and narratives. What we think of ourselves, how we view ourselves, whether we think we have value to offer, whether we think our voice matters, is going to show up in how we communicate in front of an audience. So we want to make sure that we are purposeful with the message that we are communicating to those around us and how we want to be viewed and perceived. How are we doing so far? Anything that has been resonating with you, I want you to put that in the chat box. I know that I am bringing you a lot, but the good news is you're going to have the recording and also my slides if you want to take a look at it later. So I want us to pause for just 30 seconds. As I said, I'm going to put you to work for just a little bit, but again, you can take this further on your own. I want you to take just a few seconds to write down one empowering thought that you can access anytime in the next few weeks when you're stepping out of your comfort zone. When you're doing something that feels a little bit scary, when you're doing something that's uncomfortable, what is one statement, empowering thought that you can go to and use to help yourself show up more confidently? Write that down. Now, if you feel comfortable, you can share that in the chat box. If you don't have to. And then the second question I want you to answer for yourself is, how would that manifest in your communication? Meaning, how would that show up in your outer voice when you start speaking? Okay, I'm going to take a sip of water. I'm going to give you a few seconds, and then we're going to keep moving forward. And again, you can continue working on this on your own. You can even just take a screenshot or write down the questions for yourself. Oh, and by the way, if you find anything helpful and you want to share on social media, please feel free to do so. Just make sure you tag me so I can see and reshare and connect with you. Okay, let's keep on moving forward. We're going to look at concept number 2, which is the mistakes that so many of us make and how we can avoid in order to be taken more seriously in any social setting, professional setting. From working with a lot of my clients and even myself a few years back, what I've seen is that so many of us really don't have a clarity around what do we actually want to sound like? What is that desired brand voice, if you will, or how we want for other people to perceive us, right? In a professional setting, we want to make sure that the image that we're presenting is more curated. Now, I'm not saying fake, okay? So hear me on this. It's basically your elevated self. It's how do you want to come across? And the first way to know that is to actually take the time and figure out, how do you want to sound like? And one way to do that is to actually take some time and write down some characteristics or personality, if you will, of what you want your voice to be. Is it more professional, warm, edgy? Is it bold? Is it sophisticated? Is it polished, articulate? It's usually a combination of a few things, right? But how do you actually want to sound like? And then the second part of that is to take an audit, look at the content. Like if you're putting content out on social media or anywhere else on a consistent basis, if you're doing presentations, perhaps looking at your recordings and seeing, am I actually sounding the way that I want to sound? Am I sending the message that I actually want to send? Because for so many of us, maybe there's a dissonance, there's a gap between what we think we sound like and what we actually sound like. And so just being really honest with ourselves and looking at all of the content we're putting out there and asking ourselves, is this how I want to be perceived? The second mistake is that we end up sounding just like everyone else. And I know that this is especially hard and difficult when we are consuming too much of other people's content, right? We all have mentors. Maybe we read a lot of books, listen to a lot of podcasts. I know this is something that I have to be extremely cautious about, is when we start listening to someone, we inevitably start imitating how they sound, right? Or we look around in our industry and we say, well, that person is doing this and it's working. Let me try that. Or that person is doing that. Obviously, it's working for that. Let me try that. But it's not connecting because it's not aligning with who we really are, right? And so we end up in this echo chamber and we start sounding just like everybody else. So we want to make sure that we really lean into our personality, our own style. I was just talking the other day with a friend, and she said she really wants to show up on social media consistently, but finds it so hard because she really believes that she needs to follow all these trends and the music and the dancing and the pointing, and you have to know all these apps and editing and all of that. And by the time you think of all of those things, it's just so overwhelming that she just threw her hands up in the air. She's like, I'm just done. And so if you are creative like that, by all means, I think it's entertaining. But if you just want to simply help people just show up in front of the camera and offer some valuable tips. And when you do that consistently, people will really appreciate and respond to that. And so again, knowing who you are, what your personality is, what your style is, what your voice is, and leaning into that is really going to help you here. Then downplaying our achievements and expertise. How many of you have done this? You don't want to outshine people, right? Because then it sounds bragging. And we do this so many times. We just like shove our achievements to the side. And the thing is that I don't know about you, but I have mentors I look up to. And when I see them winning, when I see all these amazing things that they're doing, it inspires me to show up more powerfully. It inspires me to continue growing and becoming better. And so don't downplay your achievements. First of all, it sends you subconsciously to your mind a message that, hey, look at me. Like I've done so many amazing things, right? I've got this. But then also it really inspires people around you. Now, yes, there will be naysayers, there will be critics, there will be the trolls, right? Who will want to try and tear you down, but you're not there for them. You are there for the people who actually need to hear from you. Then over apologizing, this is something I talked about before, and softening our statements, right? We don't want to come across as too bossy, too arrogant, too aggressive, and another B word I don't want to use, right? And so what we do, we shrink back and like, oh, let me just reel it in. Let me just say it a little bit softer. And I believe that we can be firm in our statements and be extremely gracious about it, and make our statements unapologetically for what we stand for, but also still make it sound like, hey, I'm open for a conversation. This is where I stand, but I'm not going to be offended, right? We can be gracious about it. And then finally, not owning our physical presence and our vocal presence. And you all know, there's that statistic that more than 80% of our communication is non-verbal. So our body, our physical presence, our vocal presence matters so much more than the words that we actually say. And when we shrink back, when we slouch, and when we don't speak up, it really takes away from not only our message, but also our credibility and our how we communicate our competence and people actually trusting us. And so show up, take up space, and share your voice. Don't be afraid to share your opinion, your point of view, your perspective, your experiences and stories. I remember one time I was invited, I live here in Nashville, and I was invited to an event. There were all these leaders that were my mentors that I looked up to. And I felt so intimidated. These people were in the business world for over 20 years, highly successful. And the whole time we were sitting around the table, I hardly said one word. I was like a little mouse sitting there and just like shrinking back. And when I left the meeting, I just felt so defeated. I was like, why did I do that? Because I missed out on making connections, missed out on making conversations, and also just really just having my presence felt, right? And so I encourage you, when you step into a room, just tell yourself, I am here to help someone. Don't make it about yourself. If you make it about yourself, you immediately feel this pressure of like, oh no, I have to perform. If you make it about somebody else, you're going to feel so much more empowered. I'm here to help and serve. Playing small with your wins won't help anyone. Own your success. Let it spark inspiration in everyone who watches you shine. You will always be more impactful when you show up consistently. So again, I want us to take just a few seconds and just reflect a little bit on that, the last few slides. I want you to write down 3 characteristics that represent your most confident self. So think just a few months down the road, that most confident Darla, the most confident Katie, the most confident Lindsay, Crystal. What does the most confident Crystal look like? What does she look like? What are the characteristics? When she walks into a room, What does she look like? And what does she sound like? Write that down too. Is she professional, sophisticated? Is she bold, informative, minimalistic? How does she communicate? Just take a few seconds and just write down some words that really resonate with you. And the next time you show up in a room, the next time you show up on camera, or the next time you're doing a presentation, remind yourself of what that confident self looks like and show up as her. Okay, I'm going to keep going because I only have a few more minutes left. Final concept is how can you enhance your voice and presence? And we're going to get very strategic. I'm going to give you some very practical tips here on how you can sound more competent and look more confident. So the very first step is to actually find and speak in your true tone. Most of us, when we are anxious, when we're nervous, the tone of our voice actually changes. We actually start speaking at a higher tone. And what ends up happening is when you're in front of an audience, they can tell that something is off. It feels a bit inauthentic, but they don't know why. And because of that, there is a hesitancy in trust, right? And so the more we can actually speak in our true tone, which for me, this is my true tone, the more likely that we're going to sound confident and people are actually going to trust us more. My husband always chuckles because I have a phone voice. So first of all, I don't like talking on the phone. I don't know what it is about the phone, but it just makes me nervous anytime I have to answer the phone. And so when I talk on the phone, I sound like this and I will answer, "Hi, this is Csilla." And he will start chuckling because it's just not me. That's not how I really sound like. And so most of us, when we're nervous, that's how we start sounding. We don't sound really like ourselves. So we want to make sure when we speak in front of others that 80% of the time we kind of stick to our true tone. Now, how can you figure out what your true tone is? Well, there are a few exercises. One is called the yawn sigh technique. It's basically an exercise that helps relax your throat and it helps you really discover what your natural pitch is. So if you did, oh, and then when you land at the bottom, you don't want to go too low because then that's not natural either. When you kind of land at the bottom, that's kind of like your natural tone. Now, we all have different pitches. Some of us are higher, sopranos, bass, right? So you want to make sure that you find your true tone. Another exercise that helps with this, if you're humming, like let's say you hum one of your favorite songs, and then you find your true tone through that. But I think one of the easiest ways to find how you speak in your most natural tone is pay attention next time when you hang out with someone you are extremely comfortable with. Someone that is maybe your spouse, a family member, friends, coworkers that you truly feel comfortable around. Pay attention. How do you speak? How do you sound when you're really comfortable? That's most likely your natural tone. And you want to make sure you kind of lean into that most of the time. The second thing is you want to make your voice more resounding. First technique is to actually use your breath. Again, when we are anxious and nervous, our breath becomes shallow. In fact, many times we forget to breathe very well. And of course, if we don't have enough air, there's nothing to support our voice. So you want to engage your diaphragm for better breath control, right? Strong and steady breaths from your diaphragm rather than shallow breaths from your chest. This is something that I've learned a long time ago when I was working with a vocal coach when I was a singer, and she was on my case constantly about, "Csilla, you're not breathing into your diaphragm. You have to breathe into your diaphragm." But I think just a simple thing to remember, deep breaths. It will not only make you sound more resounding, but it will actually calm your nervous system down. Again, when we're anxious and we don't breathe well, we cut off oxygen, right? And then that makes us even more anxious. So even just a few deep breaths is going to really help you. The second thing is our posture. If we're slouching, right, what do? We collapse onto our lungs, which is another source of breath, air. And so you want to make sure you stand or sit straight with your shoulders back and chest open. A good posture really allows for great breath flow, right? And that supports as well your vocal projection. And then finally, volume control. My husband would tell me all the time, he has a coworker that whenever he walks up and down the hallway, everybody can hear him because he is so loud. And so people are trying to avoid him because you don't want to have a conversation with him because everybody else is going to hear what you're talking about. And so you definitely don't want to be shouting, but also you don't want to be too soft. In fact, statistics show that people who are soft-spoken are more often interrupted. And so you want to find that middle ground. And also sometimes depending on what room you're speaking in, if it's a small room with a smaller audience, you might need to, or depending on the topic you're speaking on, right? If it's a more sensitive topic, you want to kind of calm your voice down. But if you're really making a powerful statement, you want to bring the volume up. And then also depending on if you're speaking in a smaller room or a big auditorium, right? If you have a microphone, you still are going to need to project a bit more louder. But those are some things that are going to help your voice be more resounding. Then you want to ditch the upspeak. Now, what is the upspeak? Well, it's this phenomenon that's kind of new, but it basically refers to the speech pattern in which the speaker ends a declarative statement with a rising pitch intonation, basically putting a question mark at the end of the statement, right? And so that might sound like, I recommend that we proceed with the first option. Now, how does that sound to you? Am I sounding very secure, assured in my statement? Probably not. I come across as though I'm questioning myself, right? So what you want to do, you say, I recommend that we proceed with the first option. Is that okay with you? Like, you can still have a question, get feedback, but it's going to be received completely differently. So this manner of speaking can really give the impression that the speaker is unsure of themselves. They're hesitant or actually posing a question rather than actually making a statement. So make your statement a statement, just put a period at the end or an exclamation mark, and then you can ask a question. And then finally, polish your presence. Now, as I said before, in our communication, most of it is going to be nonverbal. That's going to be the most powerful one. Your appearance is a language in and of itself, and many times it speaks a lot louder than your actual words. And not only that, but it influences how you think of yourself. There is a research that has been done how your body language impacts your mindset. So your mind doesn't just affect your body. You can affect your body with your thoughts, but then with your body, you can affect your thoughts. So science shows that your body also changes your mind. And so if you show up, again, if you adjust your body language, you are sending a subliminal message to your brain and you start feeling more confident. Your body language doesn't just affect how others view you, it also affects how you see yourself. And so some simple steps that you can do to improve your presence. These are very basic. There's many, many other ones. And if you're interested, just hit me up on Instagram. I'm happy to send you. I have a whole list of things. But first one is to, as I said before, just take up space. When you go into a room, don't shy away, don't shrink away. Just make your presence known. I'm here, right? Open posture, pull your shoulders back, down. When we do this, we're actually signaling a message that we are unsure of ourselves. We're, feeling uncomfortable in our skin. And so open posture. I'm open to discussion. I'm open for engagement. I'm open to meet people, right? It sends a confident and comfortable message. Smile. It's a very simple thing, but it's contagious. People not only smile back at you, but it's contagious for you. Try and smile it. Like when you're on your own, try smiling for a few seconds. It makes you want to smile more. I've tried this a few times. It really works. So it's like, in a way, you're convincing your own brain that, hey, I feel like smiling. Smiling is good, right? So it's always a good thing to have a genuine smile. Now, we don't want to have a fake smile. Again, people can tell fake smiles when we don't have that crease, right, in our eyes. If we're not smiling with our eyes, people are going to be able to tell. But just have a genuine smile. It just makes people feel more comfortable in your presence. Make eye contact. The eyes are truly the windows to the soul. And it's one of the fastest ways to create trust with people. Now, I know that making eye contact is hard for some people. For me, it was incredibly difficult. It goes back to my upbringing. I grew up in a very hostile environment and I had a lot of trust issues. And because of that, I had a really hard time looking people in the eye. And this was something I had to work on really hard and for a long time. First, I started with just a few seconds of holding people's gaze. Then I made it to 20 seconds. Then I made it to 30 seconds. And now I'm able to actually hold people's gaze. So it's definitely a habit and a practice. So make sure that you are intentional with your movements and not fidgety. Because again, it can be distracting. I was at a conference a few months ago, and there was a speaker that kept pacing back and forth on the stage. I was so distracted by that I probably missed more than half of their message because they were pacing back and forth on stage. So those are just some practical tips that you can use. Again, you're going to have access to my slides, and you can pull these up for future reference. But for now, I just want to leave you with this. Showing up is the start of standing out. We don't have control over many things, right? When we show up in a conversation, we don't know how the other person is going to respond. When we show up on stage, we don't know how the audience is going to respond. But what we do have control over is actually showing up, right? That's something we have control over. And the more we show up, the more consistent we are in sharing our voice, sharing our stories, sharing our message, the easier it gets, the easier it becomes, the better we become, because we practice. It's a purposeful practice, right? And the more we practice, the better we become, the more we master the art of not only showing up, but actually articulating our message in a more powerful way. So I want to take, again, just a few seconds, give you the opportunity to reflect a little bit. I invite you to write down the top 3 habits that you will intentionally work on over the next month. And what are some things you will do daily or use daily in your communication? It can be as simple as, the next time I'm going to interact with somebody, I'm going to have a smile. Or I'm not going to fidget, or I'm going to look them in the eye, or I'm going to practice empowering thoughts before I do a presentation, before I start a conversation with someone. What are those 3 habits that you are going to practice yourself? Because at the end of the day, I believe it's those little habits that help us continually become better and grow in our skills, especially as a communicator. And again, if you feel comfortable, you can share it in the chat. If you don't, that's fine too. And then I'm gonna finish up with just the offer that I mentioned to you at the beginning of our time together. If you liked my style of how I communicate, I believe you're also going to love my story workshop. I have a workshop that I teach. When I work with people, one of the hardest things, the struggle that they have, is knowing how to tell their story, which is so fascinating, right? Because in a way, your story, it's something that you've had with you for so long. but people don't know how to articulate their story. They don't know where to start, what to add, what to leave out, how to be strategic and effective in with their stories. And this is something I've been studying for years, and I absolutely am fascinated by storytelling. As you know, movie industries, books, and all of these industries, multi-billion-dollar industries. Why? Because we love stories. We connect through stories, but also we connect through good stories, right? And so we want to make sure that we tell our story well. So in this workshop, I basically teach you why stories are powerful. And not only that, but why are they powerful in business and how you can use them in business. Then how to structure your story. I have a template you basically walk through. And then also one of the fascinating things about it is I talk about what hormones you should be inducing when you are sharing your story, because these hormones are helping you really create that know, like, and trust factor. And one of these hormones is oxytocin. There's a way to tell your story that creates this bonding effect with your audience, right? And there's some other ones. And then there's hormones that you want to stay away from, like inducing stress hormones. Yeah, you don't want to induce too much stress hormones in your audience. But all of that I walk you through in the workshop. It's a 60-minute workshop. All the templates and everything is laid out for you so that it's a simple plug and play. Usually I charge $97 for it. You can get it for $47 if you'd like to. All you have to do, make sure you use the coupon code momentum. So at the checkout, and I believe Lindsay might have that link in the chat box, but you can also go to speaklikeitmatters.com /story. And just make sure that use that momentum code, because then that knocks off $50 off the price. But I just want to thank you. Thank you so much for letting me be here. It's been my honor hanging out with you. I hope you walk away feeling it was well worth your time. And I would love to stay in touch. I would love to connect with you on social media. You can find me everywhere at Csilla Muscan. I'm mostly on LinkedIn and Instagram. And so please come say hi, and I would love to get to know you more. But thanks so much for having me. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yes, thank you so much, Csilla. Oh my gosh, great notes. And I hope everyone has an opportunity to take advantage of the beautiful offer that you have for us. Thank you. That's gracious of you. There was one question. How do you avoid, or how do you get into the practice of avoiding saying or just fillers, the word fillers? How do you suggest that you can do that?
Yes, so that's a great question. And I would say, okay, I can give you 3 practical tips. First, it starts with awareness. Just by being aware of the fact that you are using certain filler words is a great first step. The second step would be, I would say, to slow your speech down. Again, when we get nervous, we start to speak faster. When we start speaking faster, our brain has a hard time keeping up. Right. And so when we slow down, it actually gives us a moment to pause. And instead of using the filler word, because the reason why we're using the filler word was we're looking for the next idea, the next thought that we want to share. And so if we slow things down a little bit, it allows us to cut some of those filler words out. Also, practice. So this is not going to go away overnight. But the more you are mindful and aware of it, the more you kind of slow yourself down, the more you practice, not even practice, but prepare in advance. So even just thinking over of what you're going to say, it really helps you to articulate and formulate. And then that's going to help you remove some of the filler words. And then finally, I actually don't believe you should cut out all of your filler words. I have seen so many presentations that are beautifully polished. They sound very perfect, but so many of the comments, some of these YouTube videos I've seen, too perfect, can't relate, sounds like a robot, right? And so I think having a few of those filler words actually make us more human, more relatable. It makes the whole presentation more conversational. Now, I definitely don't encourage you to use too many filler words, because then also can take away from your message and make you look less professional. but also you don't have to worry about completely getting rid of all of your filler words.
I have a question. When we were talking about how you control your volume and your presence, is there a different way so you can keep the energy more flowing or more bold when you're on a Zoom or like what we're doing here? Do you have to have a different kind of energy here versus when it's just you and a computer versus how you're behaving in front of an audience where there's live people?
Yes, absolutely. I love that you asked that, because that's something that I really have to work at. So my jam, if you will, is live stages. I love presenting on live stages because there's nothing like that energy, right, of the room. And when you're presenting on a virtual stage, it's different because sometimes you cannot see people's faces. Some people keep their video off, right? And so what I would suggest, first of all, think of if you can find somebody on Zoom and they have, like, I was looking at you most of the time, Darla, and I was looking at Crystal because she was so engaged. Like, she was like nodding and taking notes. And I'm like, so if you can find a couple of people that are really engaged, that will help keep your energy level up. But then also having a fictitious person that you are speaking to, like my person is Nicole, the girl that I introduced you to. And I'm thinking, okay, Nicole is here in this room and I'm presenting this to her and she needs to hear this from me, right? And so that's another thing. And then if you can also, if you're doing a presentation where you can invite a buddy to be on Zoom with you, to kind of be that friendly face, that's also going to help you show up with more energy. And again, it's one of those things where practice, the more you do it, the more comfortable it will feel. And the more you're going to get into the habit of keeping the energy up. Yeah.
One last thing that I have, you mentioned at the beginning that you read an enormous amount of books. Do you have any books that you suggest for our audience?
Communication related or any kind of related?
Okay.
Let me know which direction, or you want just personal
as far
growth,
as
leadership.
I think the personal growth, because I feel like if we are personally growing and we're more confident in ourselves, it's going to show up in our leadership as well as when we speak.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am actually a John Maxwell certified coach. So he's one of my mentors. And so I highly recommend the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. That's definitely one of my go-to. And he has another one called The 5 Levels of Leadership. That's a phenomenal book as well, as far as like leadership goes. Personal growth, there's a book called The Gap and the Gain. And that's an amazing book as well. It's written by Dr. Benjamin, and I'm blanking on his last name right now, but it's called The Gap and the Gain. And then as far as like communication books go, if you just like want to get started and really know how to do better presentations, there's a book called Talk Like TED. And this guy basically breaks down the most successful TED Talks, why they work, and gives you all the practical tips on how to do really, really good presentations. His name is Carmen. I'm looking back here because it's on my shelf. Carmen Gallo is his name, and he has a lot of other books on presentations. And then just recently, I finished reading a book. I don't know how many of you know Alex Hormozy, but he just came out with a book called 100 Million Leads. So good. It's all about how to get more in front of more audiences, like how to get in front of the right audiences with your offers. And that has been an extremely, extremely good and practical book for me personally.
Thank you. That's amazing. Thanks for sharing that.
Absolutely.
I want to thank you again, Csilla, for today.
I had so much fun. You guys were amazing.
Oh, this has been so much fun. I'm going to,
I don't know. Are there, should I stop sharing?
If you don't mind, and then I'm going to pop mine in here.
And I was going to look at the chat here to see if there's anything else.
Yes, and I will. Please do that, and then I'll also send you anything else that that we have here. So I wanted to just remind everyone, number one, to have a happy Thanksgiving to everybody from here at our whole team here at Momentum. We know this is crazy that we're here at Thanksgiving. It does not feel like it. This year's gone by incredibly quick, and we're very blessed here with everything that's been going on. We've had amazing women that we've had the opportunity to work with, and we just want to share that gratitude with each and every one of you. Thank you for being a part of us. Mentoring. If you're interested in being a mentor, or you would like to request a mentor, this is a free service, once again, that our sponsors have allowed us to do this, and would love to hear back from you. I'm getting the opportunity to head that up, and it's been such joy seeing these women come together. Also, we have our Momentum Leaders Conference that's coming up in March. Please go ahead and start getting registered, get your companies registered as well, and getting tables. We are going full tilt with all of that right now. In November 29th in Huntsville, we're doing a workshop with Vitaly Harden. That's also on our site. Would love to have you take a look at that and get registered. And then to save a date for our next webinar, virtual training, it's going to be December 12th with Dr. Cree. We're so excited to have her sharing with us. She is very well known with our Momentum audience and how she takes care of us. And once again, if you have not had a chance to hop on and vote for us for the grant that we're looking for, please take a second to do that. Thank you all again for being here. This has been an amazing day, and hope that you all have learned something, and just excited to hear back from Csilla and all that we have going on over here at Momentum. Thank you for being here with us, and have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thanks for taking the time to invest in yourself by watching our webinar. This series is produced in partnership with Social U. Many thanks to our sponsor companies, including America's Thrift Stores, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Alabama, Protective Life, and Regions Bank. A full list of Momentum sponsors is online at momentumleaders.org/sponsors. Beyond this webinar, we have a lot of ways for you to get more momentum in your life. Check out the show notes for additional links and resources.